Welcome, everyone, to Key Safety Talks.
It's great to be here.
Are you ready to dive into the world of safety?
Absolutely. It's a topic that affects us all.
We're going to be focusing on the first 14 chapters.
Yeah, that's like the foundation of safety, you know?
There's a lot to unpack there,
Yeah.
from crazy stats to some really cool tech.
And we'll even touch on some legal stuff.
Oh, definitely. We'll even look at some real-life cases.
Cases that really highlight the importance of safety.
Right, and it's not just about avoiding accidents. It's about understanding the why behind it all.
Exactly. So let's start with a bit of a reality check, shall we?
Okay, hit me.
Globally, every 15 seconds, a worker dies from a work-related accident.
Wow, that's pretty heavy.
It is, and it really underscores why we're having this conversation.
Definitely makes you think. And it's amazing to think how far we've come.
Oh, absolutely. Back in the early industrial era, the average life expectancy for a factory worker was only 17 years.
17 years. That's barely out of high school.
It's a stark reminder of how much progress we've made in workplace safety.
It's incredible, but we still have a long way to go.
We do, but the progress is undeniable.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about preventing those tragedies. It's about the economic impact, too.
Right, those indirect costs can really add up.
You're talking about things like lost productivity.
Yeah, and retraining new employees, repairing damaged equipment.
It's a huge burden on businesses.
Definitely.
So let's look at some numbers.
Okay, fire away.
The National Safety Council and the CDC, they paint a pretty clear picture. In 2011, unintentional injuries were a leading cause of death.
And a lot of those were preventable.
Exactly, with falls, motor vehicle accidents, and poisonings being the top three.
It's a sobering thought.
It is, but on the bright side, unintentional injury death rates have actually gone down since the early 1900s.
Which shows that all our efforts are making a difference.
That's encouraging. So let's talk about something exciting, technology.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Chapter 14 talks about some amazing advancements,
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff out there.
like flexible silicone patches that can monitor vital signs.
And wearable electronics that can alert workers to hazards.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is. But technology also comes with its own set of challenges.
Like what?
Remember that Asiana Airlines crash in San Francisco?
Yeah, a tragic accident.
It showed how relying too heavily on automated systems can have really bad consequences.
Because the pilots weren't as sharp with their manual skills.
Exactly.
It's a lesson in finding the right balance.
Definitely. Technology can be a great tool for safety, but it should never replace human vigilance and expertise.
Absolutely. Speaking of expertise, the field of safety has become really specialized.
It has. You know the American Society of Safety Engineers?
Yeah, I've heard
They've
that.
seen a huge increase in membership, and more safety pros are getting advanced degrees.
It's become a highly specialized field. And there are some interesting job titles out there.
Oh yeah, Table 2.1 in our text lists some unique roles.
Like hazardous materials removal workers.
And health physicists. It's amazing the range of expertise needed in safety today.
And let's not forget about the role of the government.
Oh yeah, regulations play a big part.
Back in 1970, the U.S. government created several agencies just for safety and health.
Those agencies have been so important in developing and enforcing regulations to keep workers and the public safe.
And it's a pretty interesting process how those regulations come to be.
Right. It all starts with a proposed regulation.
And then they get published in the Federal Register for everyone to see.
It's all about transparency and getting feedback.
And then eventually they get finalized and added to the Code of Federal Regulations.
It's a rigorous process, but it's designed to make sure those regulations are well informed and take all perspectives into account.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some safety theories.
Sounds good. Let's start with the classic.
Heinrich's domino theory.
Ah, yes, the domino effect.
It shows how one little lapse in safety can lead to a chain reaction,
Just like dominoes falling one after another.
and ultimately resulting in a big accident.
It's a great visual for understanding how accidents can happen.
But accidents aren't always so straightforward,
That's where the multiple factor theory comes in.
which says that accidents are usually the result of multiple factors coming together.
Right, it's rarely just one thing.
And then there's the energy theory, which looks at accidents in terms of energy transfer.
An interesting way to look at it,
It says that accidents happen when energy is transferred in an uncontrolled way.
whether it's mechanical, thermal, or electrical.
So to prevent accidents, we need to modify that energy transfer.
That's the key. And it involves thinking about things like equipment design, workspace layout, and even environmental factors.
It's a more holistic approach to safety.
Exactly.
Now, let's move on to workers' compensation.
A crucial part of the safety net.
It was a game changer in terms of protecting workers' rights.
Before these laws, injured workers often had to sue their employers, and it was a tough battle.
So workers' comp created a no-fault system.
Which means injured workers receive benefits regardless of who was to blame.
It protects both employees by covering medical expenses and lost wages, and employers by shielding them from lawsuits.
It's a win-win.
And to really understand the system, we need to talk about the 4 classes of disabilities,
Right. You have temporary total disability.
which is when a worker can't work at all for a limited time,
Then there's temporary partial disability.
where a worker can go back to work, but in a limited capacity,
And then there's permanent partial disability.
for injuries that have lasting effects.
And lastly, permanent total disability.
They're most severe cases where a worker can't ever work again.
It's a complex system, but it's all about providing support to injured workers.
Okay, let's talk about product liability.
A big one with wide-reaching impacts.
It's all about holding manufacturers responsible for making safe products.
Right, it's crucial for protecting consumers.
And there are 3 main legal theories in product liability,
The first one is negligence.
which focuses on whether the manufacturer did everything reasonably possible to make a safe product,
Then there's strict liability,
where manufacturers are responsible for any harm caused by a defective product.
even if they weren't directly at fault.
And lastly, breach of warranty.
When a product doesn't live up to its safety or performance promises.
These theories have had a huge impact on product design and safety.
Absolutely. A prime example is the Tylenol tampering case in 1982.
That was a horrible tragedy.
It really was. Someone tampered with Tylenol capsules, putting cyanide in them.
And it led to multiple deaths.
It really brought product safety to the forefront.
And Johnson & Johnson, they did a massive recall.
Yeah, and they introduced tamper-resistant packaging.
It was a defining moment for product safety and corporate responsibility.
It really changed the game.
They showed how a crisis can actually lead to positive changes.
It's a powerful lesson. It really shows how a crisis can push us to improve safety,
Yeah, it's like a wake-up call.
So let's get practical.
Okay, sounds good.
We've talked theory, we've talked regulations.
Right, but how do we actually apply all that?
Exactly. It all starts with knowing what we're up against.
Identifying the hazards.
Right. Those hidden dangers lurking in our workplaces.
Because you can't control something if you don't even know it's there.
Exactly. And hazards, they come in all forms.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, you've got your mechanical hazards, your electrical hazards, chemical hazards,
Okay, those make sense.
environmental hazards, and even psychosocial hazards.
Psychosocial hazards. Now that's a new one.
Yeah, it's a bit less obvious, but just as important.
What are those exactly?
It's all those factors that can mess with a worker's mental health.
Oh, I see.
Things like crazy workloads, tight deadlines, bullying.
Yeah, that stuff can take a toll.
It can. And even a lack of control over their work.
That's interesting. So it's not just about physical safety.
No, it's about the whole person. Their mental and emotional well-being, too.
That makes sense.
Okay, so once we've spotted those potential hazards,
What's next?
we've got to figure out how to control them.
Right, because we don't want those hazards turning into accidents.
Exactly. And there are a bunch of different ways to do that.
Like what?
Well, we have engineering controls, administrative controls, personal protective equipment.
Okay, so a whole toolbox of options.
Exactly. Each tool has its own purpose.
So let's break it down, starting with engineering controls.
Okay, so with engineering controls, you're trying to eliminate or reduce the hazard right at the source.
I see. So kind of like designing it out of the system
Yeah, exactly. Like using machine guards.
to stop people from getting caught moving parts.
Right. Or ventilation systems to get rid of those nasty fumes.
Okay, that makes sense. What about administrative controls?
Administrative controls are more about changing work procedures or policies.
So it's less about the physical environment and more about how people do their jobs
Yeah, exactly. Think about things like job rotation.
to prevent those repetitive strain injuries.
Exactly. Or having a solid safety training program.
Makes sense. And then there's PPE,
Personal protective equipment. The last line of defense.
when those other controls aren't enough.
Or can't be implemented. It's about providing a barrier between the worker and the hazard.
So things like gloves, respirators, helmets.
Exactly. It's about creating that extra layer of protection.
Okay, so let's get specific. Let's talk about mechanical hazards.
All right, those hazards related to moving parts, sharp edges.
The ones that can cause some serious damage,
Exactly. And they're everywhere.
especially in industries with lots of machinery.
Right. Things like rotating machinery are a major risk.
With all those spinning parts, just waiting to catch on something.
Yeah, like a loose sleeve or a finger.
It's scary to think about.
Yeah.
And the consequences can be awful.
Amputations, lacerations.
So how do we control these mechanical hazards?
Well, engineering and administrative controls are key.
Right, designing those hazards out if possible.
And then implementing safe work practices.
And what about guarding?
Guarding is one of the most effective ways to protect workers from rotating machinery.
So it's basically a physical barrier.
Yeah, there are a few different types.
Like what?
You have fixed guards, adjustable guards, interlocked guards.
Okay, and how are those different?
Fixed guards are permanently attached to the machine.
Okay, so they can't be removed.
Right. Adjustable guards can be moved for different operations.
That makes sense. And interlocked guards.
Those automatically shut off the power if the guard is opened.
Wow, that's smart.
And then there are presence sensing devices.
What are those?
They use light beams or sensors to detect when someone's in the danger zone.
So it's like a high-tech safety net.
Exactly. These safeguards help prevent accidents.
And of course, we need to talk about lockout, tagout.
Absolutely. Essential when doing maintenance or repairs on machinery.
Because you don't want that machine suddenly turning on while someone's working on it.
Exactly. Lockout, tagout makes sure the energy source is completely isolated.
So there's no chance of it accidentally starting up.
Right. It's a simple procedure, but it's saved countless lives.
And it's not just machinery we need to worry about. What about working at heights?
Ah, yes. Falls are a major concern.
A leading cause of workplace injuries.
It's easy to forget how dangerous even a short fall can be.
So we need to take fall protection seriously.
Absolutely. Whether it's ladders, scaffolds, roofs.
Fall protection should be top of mind.
Right, and there are different methods to choose from.
Like what?
Well, guardrails are a common one.
That physical barrier to prevent falls from edges.
Exactly. And then you have safety nets.
Position below to catch someone if they do fall.
Right. And then there are personal fall arrest systems.
Okay, tell me more about those.
Those are designed to stop a fall in progress.
So the worker's attached to a lifeline.
Exactly. They wear a harness connected to a lanyard and an anchor point.
It's like a safety net that travels with you.
It might seem like a lot of gear, but it's worth it.
When it comes to saving lives, definitely. Okay, let's move on to electricity.
All right, now we're talking about a powerful force.
One that demands respect.
Electricity can cause shocks, burns, fires, even explosions.
It's not something to mess around with.
Definitely not. And one of the key concepts in electrical safety is grounding.
Grounding. Okay, remind me what that is.
It's all about giving electricity a safe path to flow if something goes wrong.
So if there's a fault in the system.
Exactly. By connecting equipment to the earth, we create a low-resistance path for the current.
So instead of flowing through a person, it flows into the ground.
Right, preventing a nasty shock.
It's like giving electricity an escape route.
That's a good way to think about it. And then we have circuit protection devices.
Like fuses and circuit breakers.
They act as safety valves for our electrical circuits.
So they interrupt the flow of current if it gets too high.
Exactly. Preventing damage to equipment and reducing the risk of fires.
And of course, lockout, tagout is crucial when working on electrical equipment.
Absolutely no exception.
Isolate that energy source, make sure it's de-energized.
Before doing any work, it's essential for safety.
Okay, let's shift gears again. What about chemical hazards?
Chemicals, they're everywhere.
And so useful in so many industries.
But they can also be really dangerous.
If not handled properly.
Right. Exposure to certain chemicals can cause a whole host of problems.
Like skin irritation, respiratory issues.
Organ damage, even cancer.
So we need to take chemical safety seriously.
Absolutely. It all starts with a good hazard communication system.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's about making sure workers have all the information they need about the chemicals they're dealing with.
So clear labels on containers.
Right. And safety data sheets that outline the hazards and precautions.
And training programs to teach them how to handle those chemicals safely.
Exactly. It's about empowering workers to protect themselves.
And what about ventilation?
Ventilation is key when working with chemicals.
To remove those harmful fumes from the air.
Exactly. A good ventilation system is crucial for air quality.
So workers don't inhale or absorb those nasty substances.
And in a lot of cases, personal protective equipment is needed too.
Like gloves, respirators, eye protection.
To provide that extra barrier between the worker and the chemical.
Right, creating that extra layer of protection.
And remember, chemical safety is an ongoing thing.
It's not a one-time fix.
No, you need regular evaluation, training, continuous improvement.
Okay, so we've covered mechanical hazards, electrical hazards, chemical hazards. What's next?
Let's talk about environmental hazards.
Those dangers lurking in the environment itself.
Right, things like noise, vibration, radiation, extreme temperatures.
So it's not just about the specific tasks you're doing, it's about the surroundings.
Exactly. And these hazards can have both immediate and long-term effects.
Give me some examples,
Well, you've got construction workers exposed to loud noises.
which can damage their hearing over time,
Right. And factory workers operating vibrating machinery.
leading to musculoskeletal problems.
Healthcare professionals working with radiation.
That's a serious one.
And then you have outdoor workers facing extreme heat or cold.
So each of these hazards needs specific control measures.
Absolutely. You can't use a one-size-fits-all approach.
So how do we protect workers from noise?
Well, engineering controls can help reduce noise levels.
Things like sound enclosures or barriers.
Exactly. And administrative controls like hearing protection programs.
Making sure workers wear earplugs or earmuffs.
Right. What about vibration?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it can cause so many problems.
It can, so we focus on reducing exposure,
How do we do that?
choosing tools that minimize vibration, implementing work practices that limit exposure.
So using those tools for shorter periods of time
Exactly. And using vibration damping materials.
to absorb those vibrations. Okay, what about radiation?
With radiation, the focus is on minimizing exposure as much as possible.
Because the consequences can be really serious.
They can. So we use shielding, increase distance from the source, and limit the time spent in those areas.
So minimizing contact in every way possible.
Exactly. And lastly, we have extreme temperatures,
A big concern for those working outdoors.
especially in certain climates. Extreme heat can lead to heat stress and heat stroke.
And extreme cold can cause hypothermia and frostbite.
So we need to take precautions,
The kind of precautions.
providing appropriate clothing, access to shade or warming areas,
So workers can get out of the elements when needed.
and training workers on how to recognize and prevent heat-related and cold-related illnesses.
It's about adapting to the environment and taking those proactive steps to keep workers safe.
Exactly. It all comes down to recognizing that a safe workplace isn't just about avoiding the obvious hazards.
Right, it's about the whole picture.
It's about taking care of the workers' mental and emotional well-being.
And protecting them from those hazards lurking in the environment around them.
It's about creating a work environment where everyone feels safe and supported.
That's a great point. All right, welcome back to Key Safety Talks. We've covered a ton of ground already.
We have, from the history of safety to identifying and controlling those everyday hazards.
We even explored those legal aspects and those landmark cases.
Now it's time to take it up a notch.
Okay, I'm ready for the next level. What's on the agenda?
We're going to dive into advanced safety management.
Advanced safety management. Okay, give me the rundown.
Think of it as Safety 2.0.
Safety 2.0. I like it. It has a nice ring to it.
Instead of just reacting to hazards, we're going to talk about proactively creating a culture of safety.
A culture of safety. So it's not just about following rules. It's about making safety a core value.
That's it. It's about weaving safety into the very fabric of an organization.
So where do we start with this Safety 2.0 revolution?
Well, it all starts at the top with leadership.
Okay, leadership. That makes sense.
Remember Heinrich's domino theory?
Yeah, the one about that chain reaction of events.
It highlights that management is the first domino.
So if management doesn't prioritize safety, the whole system is shaky.
Exactly. They set the tone for the entire organization.
So it's not enough to just talk about safety. They have to actually walk the walk.
Right. Employees can spot a fake safety culture a mile away.
It's got to be genuine.
Yeah.
But it's not just about management dictating everything.
No, it's about empowering employees at every level to participate.
Giving them a voice, making them feel like they're part of the solution.
Exactly. When employees feel empowered to speak up about hazards, report those near misses, suggest improvement.
It creates a much more proactive safety culture.
Right. It's everyone's responsibility.
It's teamwork, working together towards a common goal.
Exactly.
Now, are there any specific models or frameworks that organizations can use to build this robust safety management system?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most recognized ones is the ISO 45001 standard.
ISO 4501. Okay, break that down for me.
It's an international standard specifically for occupational health and safety management systems.
So it provides a blueprint for organizations to follow.
Right. It helps them identify and control those workplace risks.
So it's pretty comprehensive. What are some of the key elements?
Well, it covers a wide range of topics, everything from hazard identification and risk assessment to emergency preparedness and incident investigation.
Wow, it really does cover
And
everything.
it's based on a continuous improvement model, the Plan-Do-Check-Act cycle.
So it's not just about setting up a safety program and forgetting about it.
Not at all. It's about constantly evaluating, identifying areas for improvement, and making those adjustments to boost safety performance.
So it's a living, breathing system that adapts over time.
Exactly. ISO 4501 is all about building a dynamic safety management system that grows and evolves with the organization.
Okay, let's talk about risk assessment.
That's a critical piece of the puzzle.
It's about identifying those potential hazards.
Right. And then analyzing how likely they are to happen and how bad the consequences could be.
So it's about figuring out which hazards are the most serious.
Exactly. A systematic way to evaluate and prioritize those risks.
So you're focusing your efforts on those hazards that pose the greatest threat.
That's the idea, a strategic approach to safety management.
Okay, but even with the best systems in place, accidents can still happen.
They can, and that's where incident investigation comes in.
So it's not about pointing fingers.
No, it's about figuring out what went wrong, why it happened, and most importantly, how to prevent it from happening again.
It's about turning those accidents into learning opportunities.
Precisely. A thorough investigation involves gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing all the data.
So you're piecing together the whole story.
Exactly. And then, based on those findings, we develop those corrective actions.
To close those gaps in the safety system.
Exactly. Maybe it's revising a procedure, modifying equipment, or providing additional training.
It's about making those concrete changes to prevent similar incidents in the future.
It's all about continuous improvement.
Okay, now let's talk about safety training.
That's essential, a cornerstone of any safety program.
Well-trained workers are more likely to spot those hazards,
And they'll know how to follow those safety procedures.
and they'll be better prepared to handle emergencies.
It's all about giving them the knowledge and skills they need to stay safe.
But training shouldn't just be a one-time thing, right?
No, it needs to be ongoing. Regular refresher courses to keep those safety concepts top of mind.
And to keep them updated on any changes to procedures or regulations.
And it's important to tailor those programs to the specific needs of the workers.
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
No, it's about finding the right mix of methods to make that training stick.
And finally, let's wrap up with continuous improvement.
The heart and soul of a great safety program.
It's about always striving to do better.
Recognizing that there's always room to grow, always something new to learn,
It's about making safety a journey, not a destination.
and about creating that culture of safety that's always evolving.
Adapting to those new challenges and always looking for ways to improve.
That's it. Continuous improvement is all about weaving safety into the very DNA of the organization.
It's about making safety an integral part of everything you do.
That's the ultimate goal.
Well, that brings us to the end of our key Safety Talks journey. We've covered a lot of ground, explored the foundations, the complexities, and the future of safety. But most importantly, we've learned that safety is a shared responsibility, a collaborative effort that requires commitment, engagement, and that unwavering pursuit of a safer workplace for everyone. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive into the world of safety.